This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Chirco, alongside nobody, as John Charles Macaroon is not on vacation, but out of the office and busy with many other things, such as SI Lions Maven and handling his facility, his office, I guess a better way of putting it, in Sterling Heights, where he is a psychologist. So his day job is doing that, and he is a busy man right now, raising a family, making money as a psychologist, and with SI Lions Maven. So remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Online, our website is DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can follow yours truly as well on Twitter at Vito Jerome. Now, we can talk about this further as time goes on episodes of Tigers Talk in 2020 and beyond, let's say. But should I ever entertain the idea of changing my Twitter handle to my full name, first and last name of Vito Chirco? Jerome, by the way, is my middle name, named after my father. His first name is Jerome, goes by Jerry. He's been on this podcast before in the past, remember, as well as a guest, giving his insight on the Tigers and their latest happenings. Now, should I, though? Should I, on Twitter, change my Twitter handle to my actual full name of Vito Chirco? Because that is my name, by the way, to all of those out there. As a disclaimer to all of you, my actual name, hope you guys know it by now, is Vito Chirco. Anyways, to start off this week's episode of Tigers Talk Now, we have some very big Major League Baseball news and notes to touch upon related to the cheating scandal with the stealing of signs and via technology with the Houston Astros and also the Boston Red Sox. But guys, it all started with the Houston Astros, and they were known to have used the stealing of signs via technology in 2017 when they won it all. So, the Houston Astros now have had their name tarnished forever. That season specifically, in which they won a World Series, had a great campaign all year long, finished it off with being champions of Major League Baseball for that campaign. That season, forever and ever now, will be tarnished. The legacy of those players and of manager A.J. Hinch and their former GM Jeffrey Luhnow are now tarnished forever as well, despite all of the success they garnered during their respective tenures in Houston, which, remember, it started off with a lot of losing, a huge and long-term rebuilding process, but it paid huge dividends and led to that World Series championship for the Astros. Yet, since then, the team has come under fire for the stealing of signs, and it has captivated sports fans all across the land, all across the world, too, that aren't even baseball fans because of how huge of an issue this has become and how dirty of an image it has left behind for Major League Baseball as a whole. And it became such a large issue that Commissioner Rob Manfred had to come down with a harsh penalty, and it consisted of a 1-year suspension for both the aforementioned previous manager of the Houston Astros in A.J. Hinch, the manager of that 2017 campaign that resulted in a world championship, and also of their GM back then in Jeffrey Luhnow. Two individuals that had a huge role and impact on the franchise that season and leading up to just a couple of days ago when the news came out that those two individuals were being suspended for a year and then subsequently were let go by their team owner, Jim Crane. And it took less than an hour for Jim Crane, the owner of the Houston Astros, to come to that decision to let go two dudes that once again paid huge dividends previously for his team in the Houston Astros. But was that penalty, was it severe enough, which also resulted in a fine of $5 million? And it resulted in the loss of draft picks as well for the Houston Astros, and losing first and second rounders as well coming up here in the very near future. And specifically, they will lose their draft picks now. Here we go. They will lose their draft picks in the 2020 and 2021 Major League Baseball amateur drafts. I think, with that being said, and the $5 million, by the way, from my knowledge and what I have read about this situation that has ensued, the $5 million was the harshest penalty in terms of a fine that Rob Manfred could have potentially handed down to a Major League Baseball franchise. So the Astros received that. Also received the penalty of losing their first and second rounders in the upcoming Major League Baseball amateur draft this year, but also in the following year, that is in 2021. So, was it harsh enough? Back to that once again. I view it as such. Unless you were going to strip them of the World Series title in 2017, this was the harshest you could have handed down a penalty in the form of. So I am satisfied with this, what the Astros now have to deal with. And remember, the $5 million realistically is nothing, but the losing of draft picks, I think, speaks volumes to the severity of this situation, of this cheating scandal, and how serious the Major League Baseball Commissioner's Office viewed it as well, coming down with this harsh of a suspension and penalty and fine, which I view as being satisfactory. And I know there will be those people that say they should have been stripped of the World Series championship in 2017. Now, I won't go that far because I know there has been the stealing of signs in baseball previously, and forever and ever, for decades and decades before I was born. So it's been a thing that's been pervasive in Major League Baseball as a whole for years and years now. And you're never going to nip that in the butt completely. And then also, remember, other teams that could have maybe use this to their advantage, the stealing of signs and using technology to do so, such as our hometown team, the team I talk about on this podcast, the Detroit Tigers. If they would have stolen signs and used the technology to do so in 2019, guess how many additional wins they would have ended up with? Another 3, 4, 5 wins tops they would have ended up with. They would have ended up winning 52 games in their horrendous 2019 campaign. I mean, that's how I view it. So maybe it's unfair to the LA Dodgers, who lost that Fall Classic in 2017. And the Astros were much better, remember, fared much better at home hitting the baseball than they did on the road in that series against Dodger Blue. Yet, I still view, at the end of the day, what the Astros have been dealt in terms of a penalty, I think is severe enough from Rob Manfred in the Major League Baseball Commissioner's Office. So I commend him for what he did, because those guys, Hinch and Luhnow, who maybe didn't spearhead the movement, and we'll get into that in a second, who specifically spearheaded the movement from reports. But those two dudes still, A.J. Hinch is the leader of the clubhouse as the skipper of that ball club. And then the general manager, Jeffrey Luhnow. Maybe they weren't directly involved, but they knew enough to be implicated and to have to deal with severe repercussions that ended up being season-long suspensions for this campaign, but also ended up with them losing their jobs, and rightfully so. Jim Crane, the owner of the Houston Astros, who shouldn't go unscathed in all of this either, or be a guy that goes unscathed and completely avoids criticism. But commend him for what he did. I think what he did was the right move to make, letting go of A.J. Hinch and Jeffrey Luhnow once reports came out and the suspensions were handed down of Hinch and Luhnow for the 2020 campaign. And remember, now that they've been let go, and are suspended for a year, it will affect their job fates in the near future at the very least. These guys will likely have a harder time now of getting jobs moving forward. Will A.J. Hinch get another job? Now, I think it's more likely than not that he will. Jeffrey Luhnow, who allowed this to go on his watch as well as the leader of the Astros front office, will he get another job in the near future? I think it's less likely than Hinch. So I think we could see Hinch getting another managerial job in the near future. But Luhnow, to allow that to happen in his front office for his ball club under his watch, you know what? He takes as much blame, if not more, as a guy running the day-to-day baseball operations for that franchise. And I think it severely impacts his chance of getting a job. And in that kind of role, in that kind of capacity, in the near future, definitely, but also in the long-term future. So once again, to sum up my thoughts on this issue, the scandal and the suspensions that ensued, I think it was severe enough, and I commend Major League Baseball for doing what it did in suspending those two dudes for the season. But also with Jim Crane and what he did firing those two individuals as well that were implicated, while not spearheading the movement, were still involved, knew something about what was going on, and allowed it to happen on their watch. So once again, I get where Dodgers fans now would be up in arms, and a lot of outrage is coming out. Sure, I get it. You're upset, and you have the right to express some sour grapes. But it's very unlikely that anybody, any team in this kind of situation would have been stripped of a championship. The Astros have not been stripped of the World Series crown from 2017. And it's not going to happen. So suck it up and get used to it and move on. I know it seems unfair, but it's time to get up, move on to this upcoming season, and to worry about trying to win it all now in 2020. And now moving on from that with the Houston Astros and what they have had to deal with. There's also another individual involved in all of this. And the latest reports say that this individual was the guy that spearheaded the movement directly. His name, Alex Cora. Now, as of this recording, previously, the big league skipper of the Boston Red Sox was let go on Tuesday as more and more talk was had about Cora and the suspension that would be handed down to him, which hasn't been revealed as of this recording yet. And the extent of that and what it will be, I think, will be very severe. And at the very least will be a season. And because Cora did more and was more directly involved and created this system of using technology to steal signs, I think because of that, I think it's clear cut to me, guys, that he's going to get more than a year-long suspension. And deservedly so. There's no way how I view this situation with Alex Cora and him not getting at least a 2-year ban from Major League Baseball. That would be the right move to make. And if Commissioner Manfred and Major League Baseball as a whole does not come to that decision with Cora, there will be so much public outcry that Rob Manfred might not even last as commissioner. So, from what I know, what I've heard about this situation thus far and all that has developed as of this recording on Wednesday, I see Cora getting a 2-year ban at the very least. And I think he will actually, there's a chance at least of him getting a permanent ban from Major League Baseball. And I think there's reason definitely, with that being said, to consider him being banned for life. If Pete Rose was for gambling on his team when he was skipper of the Cincinnati Reds back in the 80s, long before I was born, by the way, but if he was banned, is not allowed entry into the Baseball Hall of Fame as a result of that too, and it looks like we'll never get into Cooperstown at this point. Well, if that is the case with him, well then Cora, there's a lot of reason to consider him also receiving a permanent ban as a result of him spearheading this movement, and a movement that translated to positive results for him and the Houston Astros when he was, by the way, guys, to clarify too, the bench coach of the Houston Astros in their Fall Classic winning campaign of 2017. Then remember, he took over the Red Sox job as their skipper in 2018 and won a Fall Classic in his first year in Beantown. This past season, not as successful of results. The team failed to make the postseason, and trust me, as a Tigers fan who, had to go through that devastating result of seeing the Tigers lose in the 2013 ALCS to the Bo Sox, was very proud of that being the case. And now, and I know it's horrible to say, but I'm elated to see what will transpire with the Red Sox, which, at the very least so far, has resulted in the dismissal by John Henry in the Boston Red Sox ownership group of Alex Cora. Cora now, once again, still developments being made about what will happen to him in the grand scheme of things and what kind of suspension will be handed down. But at the very least, it should be a 2-year ban. And I could very well see where there is merit and a reason for him being permanently banned from Major League Baseball for his role in this sign-stealing scandal and saga from 2017, and something that also, remember, was a factor, at least to some degree, with his team in 2018 when the Bo Sox won it all, with our man, Dave D., the former guy leading the way in that Red Sox front office. So, remember, that did happen, and with 2 teams for Cora then. And, subsequently resulted in that Fall Classic winning campaign in 2017 for him as bench coach with the Astros, but also another Fall Classic once he took over as manager of the Red Sox when Dave D was leading the way back in 2018. So this stuff is still fresh too. So all of this that I've said, well, it has resulted in a lot of people wanting to see something done and a stiff suspension handed down for Alex Cora. And there's a lot of owners that I heard weren't happy based on reports when the suspension was handed down by Rob Manfred. I guess he talked to all 30 Major League Baseball clubs owners and said to them what would happen to A.J. Hinch and Jeffrey Luhnow, and said it would be for a year. And I guess a lot of those owners were unhappy with his decision that it was only for a year. And apparently, too, he told those owners to stay quiet on the situation and not to express their dismay with the handing down of that year-long ban for A.J. Hinch and Jeffrey Luhnow. So there's been a lot of outcry, a lot of people up in arms. And that's why there's even more merit for the suspension of Alex Cora, the former skipper of the Red Sox, and the former bench coach of the Houston Astros, to be stiffer than Hinch and Luhnow, and even to be much stiffer than Luhnow and Hinch. So that is that. That is my diatribe, and I guess the tirade that I wanted to go on today regarding the latest with the cheating scandal with the stealing of signs in Major League Baseball. And once again, to sum it all up, I commend Rob Manfred for what he did with Hinch and Luhnow with those suspensions. And only other thing he could have done, which I didn't see happening anyways, was stripping the Astros of that World Series crown in 2017. Was he going to do that, though? I didn't think so, guys, and it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. I mean, I guess unless Rob Manfred was dismissed by Major League Baseball's owners, which I haven't heard anything about that, and that would just be pure speculation on my part right now, and something I don't want to go down the route of at this point. So now with Cora, the ball's in Manfred's court, and he better do something large with that suspension and maybe even once again permanently ban Alex Cora, who, remember, was previously an analyst with ESPN. He was viewed, in my opinion, as a media darling who was beloved and could do no wrong. And you even saw the statement that John Henry came out with for the Red Sox when releasing the news of Cora's dismissal on Tuesday night, that it was a very sad day for the Red Sox. He stated that much for his franchise in so many words in the press release announcing Cora's dismissal from the franchise. So it speaks volumes about the impact that Cora had on the franchise, had on his native Puerto Rico, remember, as well. Remember, he helped out Puerto Rico in its time of dismay because of the natural disaster that occurred over there and it dealt with. So he helped give back to his native Puerto Rico subsequently. And all of that added up really helped create the narrative of Cora being a good guy and being one of the outstanding citizens in Major League Baseball. But guess what? At the same time, nobody even with that kind of standing, was going to avoid being dismissed for his actions and huge transgressions on behalf of, like I said, not just the Astros or not just the Red Sox, but both clubs. And because he was involved in multiple clubs that involved this cheating and the stealing of signs via technology, because of that, and him being a multiple-time offender, it's going to lead to a very stiff suspension for Cora and something that causes his legacy to be tarnished forever as well. And now, the other thing to consider, too, is Justin Verlander. Now, people have called on him recently, since this all came out, to react and to give a statement on what he thinks regarding this, because he has been viewed as a dude and has just been a guy that's been very public in the past about his opinion regarding the ball being juiced, leading to the amount of home runs and the record-setting amount of home runs established the past 2 seasons. So he's been a guy that has wanted transparency more from baseball regarding that issue with the juice balls and whether or not they actually are juiced. And then he's a guy that's wanted to clean up the game forever and ever, and once again has been outspoken about it in years past. Yet, up to this point, as of this recording Wednesday, has been quiet about this issue. And honestly, even though he's been called out, I don't see him speaking up and saying anything about what's happened with the Astros because of him being an employee. But if he were, by some possibility, come out, say something, and even go to the extent of requesting a trade from the Houston Astros organization, it would prove to me that he has even bigger cojones, guys, than I ever thought he did when he was a member of the Tigers, as a member of the Houston Astros. And it would prove to me that he cares about the game of baseball than his own team, and most importantly, than his own career and his own reputation, because he would put his reputation on the line as a big leaguer in a clubhouse with other big leaguers by speaking up about this issue and calling out the Astros for the stealing of signs. And also, to another point here regarding Verlander, it would be nice to see and nice to find out whether or not he knew anything about this issue, which I think, to me, at the very basic level and on the surface, I've got to believe he knew something about all of this going on because it happened inside his very clubhouse. And because it did, I really find it hard to believe that he didn't know anything at all about this issue. And that's why some have called him on the carpet for being hypocritical, for about his stances in the past, calling out Major League Baseball for not being clean and for its baseballs being juiced. But now, staying quiet, staying mute while all of this happens regarding his team and a team that he spent now multiple seasons with, and remember, won that World Series with back in 2017. So it's an ugly day for him, for the Houston Astros franchise, for the Boston Red Sox franchise, for Cora, for Hinch, for Luhnow, and for Major League Baseball as a whole. And it's something that Major League Baseball will not get past for many years to come either. And guys, I hope that was enough from me regarding that issue, as, you know what? It's something that's really bad and was tough for me to talk about as a huge fan and a lover of Major League Baseball. I mean, guys, I think I've said it to you before. I mean, Major League Baseball, baseball purely itself, was my first love. I will say that to the end of my days on earth. And the Tigers are my favorite pro sports team, a team that I will ride and die with through thick and thin, through all these 100-loss campaigns that might ensue, and hopefully just one more this season. But regarding the Tigers now, as this is Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, well, they might not lose 100 games because of recent acquisitions. 2 of them that I talked about in depth on last week's episode of Tigers Talk. And those would be the acquisitions of C.J. Cron to play first base, a former Twinkie, and Jonathan Scope to play second base, another former Twinkie. Those 2 dudes, 2 sources of power. So they bring that at the very least to the middle of the Tigers lineup, and that was much needed. So another thing that was much needed for the Tigers was adding a pitcher. And I thought a rotation arm And you know what? It did occur. As the Tigers added on Tuesday, veteran starting arm Iván Nova. And I want to look at him a little bit here and taking a look at his baseball reference page. And by the way, shout out to Baseball Reference. I love that site. It's the best of the best when you're looking for baseball stats and sabermetrics. And you look at his 3 campaigns he put together from 2016 through 2018. And those are the numbers I want to look at because he had decent campaigns during that 3-year stretch. Win-loss record of 32-31, ERA of 4.16. He pitched on average 170 innings per season. Also put together an FIP of 4.38. So, yeah, no sexy numbers there from Iván Nova. You're not going to get high-end production from him in a Tigers uni in 2020. But you're getting a guy that will eat some innings for you at the back end of your rotation and also provide you with numbers that aren't horrendous. And especially if he replicates that 3-year stretch he experienced when he was a member of first the Yankees and then the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2017 and 2018. Now, a season ago, and most recently, he spent time with the Tigers' division rival, Chicago White Sox. And my brother, as a White Sox fan and pundit alike, doesn't love Iván Nova. And Iván Nova was not great in a Chi Sox uni in 2019. Yet he still provided them, once again, and most importantly, with a crap load of innings that the Tigers could badly use. He pitched 187 innings in 2019 and finished with a win-loss record of 11-12. Now, his ERA was not very good. It was a 4.72 mark, and his FIP was even worse, which is more of a glaring sign of how he really pitched a season ago. His FIP, fielding independent pitching mark that is, was barely below 5 at 4.98. So by no way, and by no stretch of the imagination, were his numbers solid across the board. But still, he provided a team who struggled for a lot of last year with some major innings. And as I like to say, a crap load of innings, guys. And that will be a good thing for the Tigers if they get anything close to that out of Iván Nova in a Tigers uni in this upcoming season. And that's what the Tigers, in their state as a middling ball club, a club that's still rebuilding, has to look for and is definitely looking to attain via this acquisition of Iván Nova. And then once again, just like with the acquisitions of Jonathan Schoop and C.J. Cron, Iván Nova can be flipped in a trade deadline kind of deal. So maybe Nova puts up a solid first half and outperforms what we expect out of him going into this season. Same thing for Schoop and Cron, respectively. So if all of those 3 dudes do outperform their expectations, and really more for Schoop and Cron perform up to expectations, then they could very well be flipped for some young assets as the trade deadline nears. And that's the most important thing for the Tigers to get out of these guys is some solid production that could then allow these guys to be dealt for some nice young talent that they can build around moving forward. And that's why the Tigers have added these guys, and also, once again, to make themselves look and to act as a more relevant ball club. And if they do that, they will, in my opinion, win more games than a season ago, which isn't saying much, I know that. And they will look more competitive on a game-to-game basis. And I believe the Tigers viewed that as a huge issue last year with their declining attendance numbers and said they had to make a change, had to become more competitive. So I think Avila got through to owner Chris Ilitch. He said that very much to him, got through to Chris I, and Chris I subsequently allowed Al Avila to do some work here and some solid work, gaining some nice veteran-type players in Cron and Schoop, and then also in, most recently, starting arm Iván Nova. And guys, with all of that being said, that has been this week's edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Sad times for Major League Baseball as a whole, but maybe not the most sad times for the Tigers moving forward with their recent acquisitions. And remember, with some guys on the rise, Casey Mize, Matt Manning, who were named the number 1 and number 7 right-handed pitching prospects respectively by MLB Pipeline earlier this week as well. So they have a nice core of young arms to build from in their farm system currently. And you have to like that about the Detroit Tigers as well. Guys, it's been a pleasure speaking with all of you, and I look forward to talking to you all again next week, or at the very least 2 weeks from now, for another fresh edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Adios.